13 countries are disappearing. But underneath almost every story is the same force. The planet is moving the line between land and water, and it's redrawing the map faster than these countries can keep up. By 2050, some will be partly underwater. Others will be running out of water entirely. And these aren't just tiny Pacific islands. Some are home to more than 100 million people. NASA satellites and decades of geological data point to the same conclusion. The world map is changing, and these countries are in the firing line. Some of these countries are being flooded from above. Others are sinking from below, and a few are getting hit by both at once. Number 13, Vietnam. One farmer in Vietnam's Long An province put it bluntly: nothing can be grown. That's what happens when salt water reaches rice fields that only survive on fresh water. And across Vietnam, it's happening more and more. The ocean here isn't just rising, it's rising onto a coastline packed with 102 million people, faster than almost anywhere else on the planet. According to Visual Capitalist, Vietnam is already the world's third most exposed country to coastal flooding. It's also the world's fifth largest rice producer. Now, those two facts are starting to collide. Floods that once pushed 19 to 31 miles inland now travel more than 62 miles. By 2023, saltwater had damaged 8.6% of all cultivated land in the Mekong Delta. That alone is expected to knock off 3.5% of Vietnam's economy by 2050. There was supposed to be help. After the COP27 conference, the wealthier and more developed nations agreed to compensate countries suffering the worst climate change. The UN estimates the bill at up to $387 billion every year. By of 2024, just $661 million had been pledged. Vietnam is largely on its own. Farmers have adapted the only way they can. Many now shift between rice and shrimp farming. Without enough fresh water flowing downstream to flush the soil clean, shrimp ponds leave salt behind permanently. The more farmers adapt, the harder it becomes to grow rice again. And that's still not Vietnam's biggest problem. Ho Chi Minh City, home to 14 million people, is sinking. If today's trends continue, nearly all of southern Vietnam will sit below the high tide line by 2050, forcing around 20 million people from their homes. But Vietnam's not blameless in all this. It's helping to sink itself. After surveying water use at 15,000 locations over 25 years, geologists found that more than 8.8 million cubic feet of groundwater are pumped from the Mekong Delta every day through mostly unregulated private wells. The Vietnamese government still hasn't come to grips with this reality, and it's far from over. Some countries are sinking even worse because of questionable political decisions. The next country is sinking too, just not in the same way. Number 12, Iran. You probably weren't expecting to see Iran on a list like this. It's a huge country defined by plateaus and mountains, with only a small coastal area. The Persian Gulf might be rising by almost 0.2 inches a year, but the bigger danger to Iran is beneath the ground. Iran is a country whose land is sinking under its own fields. It's not oil fields like in Venezuela. Iran has another source of wealth. It's the world's second largest pistachio producer after the United States. The industry brings in an extra $1 billion a year, and between 45 and 70% of those nuts come from one place, the Kerman province. But there's a downside. Kerman is a completely landlocked desert that sees just 0.54 inches per year of precipitation. So, the farmers have to get water from aquifers beneath the ground that accumulated from eons, and now they're straining the land. Some parts of Kerman, like Razavi Khorasan County, are sinking by as much as 14.5 inches each year because of all the water being pumped out. Kerman is just the most extreme case. In May of 2025, Iran's government admitted that 30 of the country's 31 provinces are sinking, and the ground is still giving way. Up to 1 million wells now pump around 1.77 trillion cubic feet of groundwater out of the country every year. The result isn't just a greater risk of flooding, it's the slow collapse of Iran's infrastructure too. German scientists estimate that the ground beneath Tehran's Imam Khomeini International Airport is sinking by about 1.9 inches every year. Beneath the capital's oil refinery, it's even worse, between 8.6 and 12 inches annually. Highways, railways, factories, and entire neighborhoods are dropping, while sinkholes are becoming increasingly common. Satellites tracked the progress from 2014 to 2020, and the hardest-hit regions turned out to be the country's most populated ones. Half of all Iranians, around 42 million people, live on sinking ground. 14 million live in areas experiencing severe subsidence, concentrated around provinces like Tehran, Razavi Khorasan, and Fars. The places that matter most to Iran's economy are the ones disappearing beneath it. The government says it's fighting back. More than 12,300 illegal wells were dismantled in 2024 alone. But it's a game of whack-a-mole. One organization can drill almost wherever it wants. Over Iran's water infrastructure through its Khatam al-Anbiya construction conglomerate. Critics have nicknamed it the country's water mafia. Dismantling that system would mean dismantling one of the very institutions that helps keep the current regime in power. So, this isn't a crisis imposed by an unfair international system. It's a crisis driven by Iran's own politics. The next country is sinking too. It's just not water they're after. Number 11. In June of 2026, earthquakes rocked the coast of Venezuela, just west of Caracas, killing over 3,800 people. But the 7.2 and 7.5 quakes were just the beginning of its natural problems. With sea levels rising, Venezuela's current coastal territory is vanishing. By 2050, 30% of the Orinoco Delta is set to be gone. This isn't just a hotspot for biodiversity. It's also home to 36,000 indigenous people. But the looming crisis doesn't just affect them. The port of Guantan and Margarita Island, with its 500,000 people, are also set to disappear beneath the waves. But much like Iran, the reality is probably worse than that. Climatologists made those projections using data from 1999. That was the year Hugo Chavez came to power and launched the so-called Bolivarian Revolution. Since then, Venezuela has largely stopped collecting reliable climate data. Around 70% of the country's weather stations are damaged or out of service. So, when scientists predict Venezuela's future climate, they're often forced to guess. But the one thing they don't have to guess about is oil. If extraction continues at current rates, as much as 80% of Venezuela's 1,700-mile coastline could face subsidence or erosion as sea levels continue to rise. Venezuela isn't disappearing only because of climate change. It's also disappearing because of what it's pulling out of the ground. In 2025, Venezuela held more than 303 billion barrels of oil in reserve, the largest on Earth. It's over 17% of the global total. It currently produces about 903,000 barrels every day, but every barrel comes with a cost. Lake Maracaibo, one of the richest oil fields in the world, contains roughly 20% of the country's reserves. Oil has been extracted here since the 1920s. It transformed Venezuela into the so-called jewel of South America, and decades later became the financial lifeline of the Chavez government. But removing that much oil has the same effect as squeezing water from a sponge. Except in this case, the sponge dissolves. Around Lake Maracaibo, cities like Cabimas and Lagunillas have sunk by more than 16 feet. Entire communities that were once safely above sea level now sit below it. Aging dikes are all that's keeping the lake out. As sea levels rise, it's becoming a race between the water and infrastructure that's falling apart. And the extraction is about to ramp up again. The new government wants Venezuela producing 3 million barrels of oil a day. More than triple today's output with the help of American oil companies. There's been far less discussion about reinforcing the dikes protecting the people who live there. Because for those making the decisions, pumping oil is the priority. The oil made Venezuela rich. It might also be the reason the coast doesn't survive long enough to spend it. Unlike some countries on this list, the next nation is actually trying to solve its problem. Number 10. Jordan can't drill its way out of a water crisis. And it isn't trying to either. It's building its way out instead. There's less water per person than any other country on Earth. In the capital, Amman, many families are waiting up to a week between water deliveries. To understand why, look at the water that nobody can drink. The Dead Sea has been shrinking by over 3.2 feet a year. Since the 1960s, by 2050, it could be almost completely dry. This time, climate change isn't the main culprit. The people are. The Jordan River that feeds both the country and the Dead Sea has been diverted for decades. Israel controls much of the river's flow through the Degania Dam at the Sea of Galilee. Syria has built more than 40 dams along the Yarmouk River, the Jordan's largest tributary. Jordan built dams of its own, but being the country furthest downstream means there's less water for those dams to regulate. End result, the Jordan River now delivers 3.5 billion cubic feet of water to the Dead Sea, and roughly 50% of that is contaminated. Before the 1960s, between 42.4 and 45.9 billion cubic feet of water reached the Dead Sea every year. No one can agree on how to restore the river. But Jordan has one advantage that almost every other country on this list doesn't. The ocean doesn't swallow it. There is a functioning government, a $50 economy, and almost 11.5 million people. It already recycles about 90% of its wastewater. 1.